them and think, nah, let's not bother. Let's go to George instead. What have you got for us, Mr. Galloway?
Well, the first one's off the internet, which will increasingly be the case, I suspect.
reckon so.
Ruling due on DNA database case. This is a very interesting story. A man in Sheffield who'd been just charged with harassing his partner, but the case was later dropped after the couple were reconciled. So you can hardly think of a less appropriate instance when someone's DNA having been taken should be kept.
Yeah.
But the police have stored it, and 4.5 million people in Britain have their DNA on a database, but 1 in 5 of them does not have a current criminal record.
Entirely innocent.
They're entirely innocent in the eyes of the law, and yet
I suppose the argument
DNA is kept.
If you're on that database, it sort of suggests, does it not, that you are a bit dodgy.
But this is a government that can't stop losing our data. Can't stop losing discs and dates of birth and children's names and so on. We can't trust them with 4.5 million people's database. They might privatise it, lose it in a taxi, leave it on a train. And a lot of misuse can be done with people's DNA. Your DNA can be dropped at the scene of a crime if criminals get their hands on it, for example. Yeah. And if you're not a convicted person, or in this case, not even in the end tried, because the couple were reconciled, the case was dropped, it seems a very powerful case, and the European Court seems likely to agree that it should be wiped. Secondly, the Daily Telegraph have got Nazi TV documentaries hit teaching of German. Now, the number of... It's funny, you can laugh, but I had a friend who sold Japanese cars, and he told me that he used to groan every time he looked at the TV schedules at Christmas. If the bridge on the River Kwai was on the television, sales of Japanese cars plummeted in the subsequent days and weeks. So it may be that there's something in it. Language
there's all this
teaching.
scandal with BMW at the moment, and links between the original bosses of BMW and a certain Adolf Hitler.
Yes, and Mercedes, and of course the Volkswagen was invented by Adolf Hitler. Yeah. Now, language teaching in Britain's going up, that's a good thing, but German is going down, and they're blaming that if you flick through Sky, the History Channel and so on, you can always find something about Hitler and the Nazis. Myself, I think it's much more to do with the fact that learning German's not really of much use to you unless you're going to go and live in Germany or deal with Germans, as they're the only people in the whole world who speak it. A controversial one in The Sun, Osama bin Lego, fury at toy terrorists. Here we have... These are I should say that Lego have nothing to do with this.
Right.
They're Lego-like. But Lego are not
There's
actually...
a firm, isn't there, that customises...
Yes, they're customising Lego-ish figures. But here you have, I thought it was interesting, you have a unique confluence of complaints. Mohammed Shafiq of the Muslim organisation, the Ramadan Foundation, and Eddie Friedman of the Jewish Council for Racial Equality, each complaining about this, one perhaps about the SS figure, the other perhaps about the Bin Ladenish figure. Myself, I think they're both being a little bit sensitive. As a child, I played Japs and British, Germans and British, because that was the nearest war to our experience. For children today, I wouldn't myself buy my son things with guns and so on. But if you're going to buy soldiers, toy soldiers, there's no point in making them Japs and British. Because that was 60 years ago. These are, as it were, more contemporary figures.
Isn't it just a really sad idea to gain loads of publicity, which the Sun has handed this company?
It's probably boosted sales, as we've just done too, so perhaps better draw veil. You'll forgive the pun.
Nice one. What have you got, Lewikins? A little later in the programme, we're going to ask if you would like to keep your unborn baby's sex a surprise. 0207 173 5555 is the number for your thoughts and for your stories. But first... should the Speaker of the House of Commons, Michael Martin, stand down from his prestigious post as one of the most powerful civilians in the country after dropping a colleague right in it over the police raid on last month on Tory MP Damien Green's homes and offices? Now, it's all got quite complicated, but from what we understand, the police contacted Martin the day before this controversial raid, and they also had words with his Sergeant-at-Arms, Jill Pay. She didn't ask if they had a warrant to search Green, because she didn't know she had to, apparently, and the Rozzers didn't tell her, but they should have. But Martin didn't ask about a warrant either, and many I feel, he should have done. And yet, in a common statement yesterday, he said it was all his colleague's fault.
The Sergeant-at-Arms called me, told me the member's name, and said that a search might take place of his offices in the House, I was not told that the police did not have a warrant. I have been told that the police did not explain, as they are required to do, that the sergeant was not obliged to consent, or that a warrant could have been insisted upon.
So, nothing to do with him, all to do with his sergeant of arms. Nice of your boss to drop you in it so publicly, isn't it? No wonder some MPs want his blood. Even Leader of the Commons and Labour stalwart Harriet Harman refused to back him. Asked if she had confidence in Martin, she said, and I quote, "I'm not saying I've got full confidence in anything or anybody." What a reassuring comment. Now, Martin is no stranger to controversy. In the 8 years since he resigned his Labour seat to become the Speaker, he's been accused of abusing his position, of political bias, of flying his family on business-class trips, using air miles gained on official business, of claiming a £17,000 allowance on his Glasgow home despite having no mortgage. All of that, I'm going to suggest today, is irrelevant. I just wonder if he should go because of what he did yesterday. It is worth saying, though, that Jackie Smith is going to address the Commons over the Green scandal today, and that might take some of the heat off him, don't you think, George?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a very...
She says she knows nothing at all about anything.
Nothing, Gov. It was an undignified performance. It was a bit like the Titanic, women and children last. He threw everyone into the waves while he got on the lifeboat and tried to row away. But I suspect that it will not succeed. I should say that
I have to say it works well.
I have long defended him, including on this show.
Yeah, you have.
Not least because that Gorbals Mick thing is a double whammy. First, it's snobbery because he's working class, and the Mick, in case you missed it, is because he's the first Catholic speaker since Oliver Cromwell. And there are some people, believe it or not, in our country today who didn't like either. But I'm afraid the buck stops with him. You see, he says that the Sergeant-at-Arms didn't ask for a warrant, or wasn't told there was no warrant. But he didn't ask her if there was a warrant when she called him.
Did Jill Pay have to go to him when the police came to her to say they were going to search?
He was in Glasgow and she rang him at 7.
She has had a conversation with him.
She rang him, but he should have said to her, well, do they have a warrant? That would be the first question he would ask. Now, you may well say that on her salary and her position, she ought to have had the nous to say to the police, well, can I see your warrant? And so both of them are culpable. But in a situation where two people are culpable, the more senior of the two has to take the maximum responsibility.
Can I ask just one question for the benefit of everybody, actually? I mean, for politicians, this is a big issue. Opposition MP being raided for doing nothing any different from what Brown was doing when he was in opposition. Why? Can you give us shed a bit more? Why is it such a big issue?
Let me put it concretely, and it relates to your long time ago former proprietor. I exposed Robert Maxwell in the House of Commons under Parliament.